So I can't go into too much detail because there is a live police investigation going. The report has been sent to the PF to be determined properly. All that I will say on it is that I was very lucky. There was 2 activists with me. I think it could have been a lot worse if there wasn't other people who were with me at the time. And I'm very, very thankful to the police who took very, very swift action in coming to speak to me, speaking to the activists who were there, and then reporting it forward. And the last thing I would say is it's just a highlight of how dangerous politics can get. We live in a democracy. People are well within their rights to call me names in the streets, to have arguments. That's what debate and democracy is. When it comes to physical assaults, it's a very, very different conversation now. And what happened to me yesterday is not nice. It's not something I want to go through, but it's not something I want any activists to go through either. And I think all politicians just have to be careful what we're saying.
You're obviously here campaigning for reform. Is it something you worry about, your personal safety?
More than I have done before. I'll be honest with you, yesterday I was very shaken up by what had happened. I'm a dad, so I take this extremely seriously. I'm fighting for what I believe in. But at the same time, I care really, really passionately about fixing the city and fixing the problems that I'm in politics for. It's why I've done it from such a young age, because I care passionately about Scotland's forgotten working class communities, about solving the issues when it comes to addiction, about making sure that people can get back into work. There's real passions I have. And yesterday, after the incident took place, as I was still out campaigning, I then got support from people around the corner. It reminds me why I'm doing this. But I do get concerned about the discourse in our politics, just the anger that's out there, the loudness that comes with it. I think that I do get concerned when people use words like racist and far right and fascist to describe people that you disagree with. I don't think that's helpful at all. So I would just say that we just need to be careful in some of the language that politicians do use. Yeah. So I don't blame my opponents for what happened to me. Whatever the reform sources said is up to the reform sources to say that themselves. I don't want to speak about the incident that actually happened. The police will deal with that, the courts will deal with that. I'll go through the same processes as normal. I don't blame my opponents. It was the guy who done the assault yesterday that I blame for that. It's not John Swinney or any of my opponents. But what I do mean is that when you're called racist, when you're used words like fascist and neo-Nazi and far right to describe somebody that you disagree with politically, you can't then expect that there's not ramifications. And we have this consistently. We have Anna Sarwar making up lies on debate stages about our candidates saying they wanted to deport his children. Nobody's ever said that. But when Anna Sarwar says that, he puts a target on people's backs. We just need to be careful in politics about what happens. There's a difference between having a political disagreement, arguing that the policies and that the viewpoints of certain politicians isn't right, but when you take it that little bit too far, you then can't be surprised when people in the streets start reacting to it. All that I would say to that is that says more about Anna Sarwar than it does me. I'm glad he's condoned the attack, but the fact he then pivoted straight away into using the tropes that he's used in this entire campaign says more about him than it does me. That's not what our candidates have said. What Senga Beresford, who's the candidate that Anna Sarwar is referring to, was replying to a tweet. Now, she's admitted that her tweet was probably a bit lazy in the wording, but she was speaking about Sharia law. When it came to Muslims, she was speaking about a very specific issue. What Anna Sarwar has done is took that one little tweet, made it a big amplified argument, and then targeted Senga in a horrific way, and to the extent that she's had death threats because of what Anna Sarwar has done as well. So the fact that he has taken an assault that happened to me, condemned it, great, fantastic, but then pivoted straight away to using these tropes, I think says more about him than it does me.
Do you think any of your candidates or former candidates have made racist remarks? There was one who said Hamza Yousaf wasn't British, she called him an Islamist. Is that racist?
She's no longer a Reform candidate.
But do you think that statement was racist?
It's not comments that I would use. It's not wording that I would use at all. It's verging on a line of it's not something I would want to go on. I am very, very clear. I'm a Glaswegian. I love this city like mad. I love the diversity our city can bring. I am always a supporter of people who came here legally, who want to make a home for themselves and build up a society in our country and who integrate properly. That's great. The issue Reform always talks about is mass illegal migration, which is putting cities like Glasgow at breaking point. I think there's a genuine political argument on this. I don't want to get bogged down in arguments about racist or far right or fascist, because that's how incidents like what happened to me yesterday end up happening and becoming normalised in our country. So I don't think that any of our candidates are racist. I don't think any of our candidates have said anything that are racist. I think that they are working people who are not polished politicians who will say stuff brashly and loudly, but who genuinely care about their communities and about people and want to try and get the country back on track. Again, what I said about Anna Sarwar is what I reiterate. I'm glad that John Swinney's condemned it. I'm grateful that they've done that for me personally and for my family who have had to go through this horrific situation of my safety now being spoken about in the press. But it says more about our political opponents that they still are pivoting back to using tropes to attack our party and calling us racist when they're also condemning an attack on me because of what happened. I think that says more about them than it does me, and I just think we need to try and tone it down a little bit. We're going into the last week of this campaign. Let's speak about the issues. Let's speak about the fact that John Swinney's had nearly 20 years of abject failure. He came to power when I was in primary 7. I'm going to highlight his record. I'm going to make sure we beat him next week at the election, because that's our message. That's what we want to focus on. Let's talk about policy and let's end this whole sort of nonsense.